I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country, the Gadigal people, of the Eora Nation, and elders both past and present. All my life, I've been told to tone it down. That if I just tried to fit in, everything would be okay. However, as a youth, I discovered in the face of overwhelming prejudice and persecution an incredible strength through being fiercely fabulous. I am Starlady Nungarai, the real queen of the desert. Aboriginal communities might be the last place that you would expect a radical, queer superheroine to find her place in the world. Today, I am truly honoured to share with you my surprising story of finding acceptance, a place where I was given the space to thrive, where the power of friendships overcame cultural and social divides. Like many young queer people, in my youth, I was forced to flee regional Australia to find a safe haven in the inner city. I sought and found refuge in Melbourne, where I immersed myself in a world of vibrant and diverse subcultures. Yet the systematic discrimination and continuous harassment that I faced on a daily level outside of these spaces continued. In 1996, I found myself before the Victorian Victims' Compensation Tribunal seeking justice after being violently assaulted by homophobic bigots. The presiding magistrate looked me up and down, and with his head held high, he proclaimed his judgment. If Joe Blow saw you walking down the street dressed like that, he'd say that you deserved it. He gave me a pittance of the compensation that I should have received, and I walked out of our justice system absolutely devastated. Something inside me snapped. I'd had enough of the violence, of the people telling me who I could be and how I should live my own life. I'd had enough of being a victim. I swore to myself that I would take every last cent of that money and I would transform myself into one of the most colourful and creative beings that this country has ever seen. After first engaging with remote Aboriginal communities through activism during the early 2000s, I toured the Western Desert on school holiday programs with a vagabond troupe of circus activists. It was a meeting of different people and cultures. One Aboriginal elder called me over to share with me the funny story of how people had been frightened of me when I first arrived, that they had never seen anybody like me before. In his community, everybody now lived Christian way and covered up. Yet he said, in their culture, in Ananu way, everybody was just themselves, and so that my way was their way too. He told me that his country was my home now, and that I would always be welcome. In telling you of my story, I don't want to give a false impression. There are still sometimes taboos regarding diverse sexualities and genders on remote communities. But there is also an open-heartedness that transcends these taboos through friendships and family connections. Skin names are part of the complex kinship system of how Aboriginal people relate and are connected to each other in their society. Upon arrival in the Western Desert, I was first given the men's skin name Jungarai. Yet in a matter of days, it was acknowledged this wasn't quite right. That I was mixed up one, both kunka and wati, woman and man, that I needed two skin names. And thus, to everybody's delight, I became known as Jungarai Nungarai Kunkawati. I then travelled to northern Queensland, to Palm Island, where I first met members of the Sister Girl community. Sister Girls are Aboriginal transgender women whom have their own distinct cultural identity. They had a profound impact on how I looked at my own identity in relation to Aboriginal culture. When I returned to the Western Desert, I left that men's skin name behind. In a culture with strict divides between men and women, I identified as a woman, and I fully embraced my female skin name Nungarai. Soon, many of my non-Indigenous peers were all approaching me. They were wanting to know what was going on, for they had all been reprimanded for misgendering me by my Aboriginal peers if they had referred to me as he. This reflection was like an awakening to me, for I hadn't yet questioned my gender identity within my own culture. The Aboriginal communities I was working in had recognised and accepted my transgender identity even before I was fully conscious of this myself. The allure of an adoring fan base finally drew me to live in Alice Springs. Whom wouldn't want hundreds of children screaming out your name, Starlady, Starlady, following you around, laughing at your cheeky antics and glitzy outfits? For the last 6 years, I've travelled thousands of kilometres across the Western Desert, working on youth-based hairdressing and fashion programs. With a four-wheel drive troopie filled to the brim with equipment, we've set up hairdressing and fashion salons that have become intergenerational hubs. Parents would be shaving mohawks and rat's tails and lightning bolts into their children's hair. Grandchildren would be dyeing the old people's hair. And we'd be teasing everybody that with such lovely hair, they might find new loves. Young people would be styling each other up for fashion shoots and photo parades and fashion parades, and we'd close the doors and we'd talk story about our lives because there was no shame in the salons. We'd even learn about sexual health and well-being because it wasn't just about hair. It was about creating safe spaces where people could explore and express their own identities. I consciously nurtured environments where people would develop their own sense of self-esteem and pride. The salons have been a roaring success, but they have taken place against the backdrop of severe disadvantage and complex social problems. When we were making Queen of the Desert, the documentary, in Arionga, many of the strong women were away on cultural business. It created this dynamic space where many of the younger women stepped up to take prominent roles in the salon. One young girl in particular, whom was normally so shy, took to the centre stage and she just loved being in front of the camera. We're talking about highly vulnerable young people whom are notoriously difficult to engage. But she would be there every morning, calling out, wanting to start the day. For a time, we were movie stars together, happy and proud. 2 years later, we lost her to suicide. She was only 13. Whilst creativity is a powerful force, there are deep systemic failures impacting upon Aboriginal youth that one program alone cannot solve. Yet I passionately believe that we have a responsibility to invest in young people from remote Aboriginal communities so that they may reach their full potential. When I first came into awareness of my transgender identity, I felt incredibly isolated. The city, where I assumed the vast majority of trans people lived, felt a long way away. I realised I was mistaken when I met one Northern Territory sister girl. She kindly invited me to accompany her on a sister girl retreat. Yet I was hesitant. I questioned whether it was appropriate for a non-Indigenous person to attend a program that was clearly for Aboriginal people. She turned to me and said, "Starlady, it doesn't matter about the colour of your skin. What matters is that you are family. She paved the way for me to become one of the first non-Indigenous transgender participants and kindly introduced me to the wider sister girl community. Their generosity forged a relationship that has been part of a movement that has changed the landscape of transgender politics in Australia. Together, we formed a small community group, Sisters and Brothers NT, that has travelled across this country advocating for sexual orientation and gender diversity rights from a cross-cultural perspective. Our cultures are not exclusive. There is also an interconnectedness, and we have learnt that together we are stronger. I want to acknowledge all the Aboriginal communities that have offered me a unique and celebrated place within their societies. Through love and acceptance, I have had the opportunity to thrive. I want to remind you all that it is time to turn up your volumes. Creativity can be a powerful tool for healing, transformation, and self-empowerment. You don't need to live like me, nor look like me, but it is vital that you are true to yourself. I am not saying that the path ahead will be easy, but I am saying that through transforming yourself, you have the power to influence the world around you, for we are all connected. It is not about whom shines the brightest, but rather that we all shine brightly together. I look forward to co-creating a more fabulous world with you all. Thank you.